The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM. Welcome to the Center for Educational Media. This is the SPED Collaborative coming from CEM, Center for Educational Media, in the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University. We are so glad you are here today. We have people on site here, and then we have people online joining us. I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Ms. Courtney Lee. She's from Clarksville, Montgomery, and she has been nominated for her work in supporting social and emotional learning in students. And this is, we've had many requests to have some suggestions on how to do this in special education. So Courtney, we're so happy you're here today. So if you'll come on up here and please continue, fill in, because I just introduced you very briefly. So tell us about yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning. My name is Courtney Lee. I'm a special education teacher in Clarksville, Montgomery County. I've spent about 10 years, this is my 10th year, in Clarksville, Montgomery County working with our SPED students, a large part in CDC and middle school. I've recently switched to elementary, and that's where a bulk of my social emotional work has been done in elementary level, and that's where I'm really passionate about is the social emotional work. At that elementary school level and giving them those foundational skills. Just to start, this is a quote from Dr. Christine Tennyson. She's my aunt, and I watched one of her presentations through the ELL collaborative, and this quote just really hit me. We don't just teach. I don't care if you've been in it 20 years or 5 years, you understand your role as an advocate for your students. When I think about SEL and I think about giving those students those skills, it's the best advocacy for them, because then they can advocate for themselves. If our kids don't have those social emotional skills, they can't tell us how they're feeling or what they need, then they can't advocate for themselves. It's the very basis of that everything for me. Just a SEL, just as an overview, are lessons that are meant to teach skills such as social skills, emotional skills, attitudes, behaviors, and values. And those are all such broad topics. And a lot of them can be done through just basic interactions. And that's my favorite part of it, I think, is that just having basic interactions with your students and talking to them and enjoying them and giving them real, honest feedback is giving them that social emotional learning. So this is just kind of like our basic layout for what my PowerPoint looks like and how I'll go through. A large portion of it will be spent in elementary school, just because that's where I've done the bulk of my social emotional work and where I've seen the great growth in my students. There's some middle school strategies that I used in my middle school days, where I did for a little bit. I was in an extended behavior support program, so did some SEL stuff with them, and then just some useful accommodations that we can give our kids to support them socially and emotionally that are done pretty widespread, but some of them are super easy. So there are two basic types of support that I used, that I currently have been using in elementary school, and that's that small group pullout. And typically for SEL, what I do for small group pullout is a morning session and an afternoon session. Y'all, when I say sessions, I'm talking like 10 to 15 minutes. That's typically all I keep them, because when I'm working with them, I have like first graders and second graders, the littles. You're not keeping their attention for longer than about 10 or 15 minutes on one topic. So anything longer than that becomes arduous for you and for them. So then I would do a morning session, and then that same group as kids, I would do an afternoon session with, again, 10 to 15 minutes, just checking in and checking out. And then there's that course support in the general education classroom, focusing on specific students that need the social emotional support. So we know we have core support for those students who need things like reading and math support, but we also have those students who need to learn social and emotional skills inside the general education classroom, because small group work's amazing for some things, but teaching things like raising your hand, not talking over your teacher, being nice to your peers, those things are best supported in the general education classroom, because you can actually talk to them about the interactions. So that core support in a general education setting, it's really important, and I think oftentimes something that we don't focus on enough for our students who are lacking these skills. Okay, so my morning small group, at the very beginning of the day in Montgomery County, we've had a large push on social emotional across the board for general ed students as well. So at the school I'm currently at, there's a 15-minute SEL portion at the very beginning of the day. So it just worked out great for me, because I literally just took them out of that social emotional big group time and brought them into a social emotional small time. I had some groups that ran as long as 30 minutes, but the sweet spot for me was 15 minutes. Like I had them in my room for 15 minutes, and I took them back, and that was perfect. You don't want to cut yourself too short, but like I said, you don't want to get it too long, because the littles then become real extra. We included in our morning small group, we included calendar, a weekly book, social story video clip activity, and then a token reward system. Those are the three main things that I hit on every day, and my kids knew that pattern and knew exactly what was expected when they walked in my classroom. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail about those three things. So this is my calendar time, y'all. It was my absolute favorite. I cannot stress enough how much this taught my kids and how much it showed me about my kids and them about me. This would be last December, and this is what the calendar looked like when I gave it to them. I would write things like winter break, our holiday music program, that was whoever's birthday, I whited out his name, and then the half day, and just basic information that our kids may need. So this is what it looked like at the beginning of the month. It's just a blank calendar. I usually tried to pick something that had fun on it. They like to color it, you know. Google is your best friend. They have all kinds. So at the end of the month, this is something like it would look like. This is mine, so it looks a little neater. I had some student ones, but I couldn't figure out a way to get their names off of them, and so just all those guidelines. This is mine. So you see that there are some days where I was like a basic color, and there are other days where I was like, I'm going to get a little bit extra, because some days our students are a little bit extra, and they do the same thing. So on this side, and if you think about these colors, and it can be interactive, but think about something you could associate, a feeling that you could associate with these colors. So I'll start. So I had one kid who loved telling me rainbow. That was her color every day when we talked about it. She'd be like, I'm rainbow today. I'm like, okay, awesome, you're rainbow today. What's the feeling though? And so she would have to pick a feeling out of rainbow. Well, I'm pink because my mom loves me. And I'm like, okay, that's perfect. That was her color in that rainbow. A lot of times you see a lot of schools already have a color chart. They already do some type of, your guidance counselors a lot of times do some type of color coding for your emotions. Typically there's 4 basic ones. So the kids can go green because I'm happy, because they know that one. And then as you progress, so we started with our 4 basic colors because our school does one of the color codes. And we started with our 4 basic colors. Green, they were happy. Blue, they were tired. Yellow, they were tired. Blue, they were upset. Red, they were like something big was happening in their lives. Those are the 4 we started with. And then as the semester went on, Y'all, they would be like, purple because it's my favorite color and I'm having an awesome day. And y'all, the things it tells you about your students, because not only when my students do their calendar and color their day every day, I would do my calendar at the same time as them. So like we would start and they would color it. I'm like, okay, what's your color today? They would color it, a quiet time, some reflection, because they knew what was coming next was me going, okay, Toby, what color are you today? And he would have to tell me, I'm yellow, and then I'd be like, okay, but why are you yellow? And then, not only are they picking a color, but they're having to tell you their feelings. Because if we're not giving them those words for them to tell us their basic feelings at a time that's safe, they're never going to be able to find those words to tell us their feelings at a time when they're escalated. The more feelings we can give them, the more words we can give them to understand their own feelings, the better they can tell us those at times when they're feeling some type of feeling that we don't know or is causing them to be escalated in the classroom. So I have for you, it was on the takeout table, a December calendar. I made it real quick in PowerPoint. And I encourage all of you to take this calendar with you, fill it out. If you recognize how you're feeling in the morning, what could you change to make your day better? And that's what we did, kind of like my students when they came to me and they were like, oh, I'm red today. Oh, okay. I was like, where's my end of month calendar? I skipped it. So on a yellow day, on that day, I was tired, but then I was also super frustrated. So I did like yellow because I was tired. And then I put red because I had had a horrible morning at my house. And one of my own kids had been mean or something, so I put red. And so then when I was able to share that with my small group also, they were able to look at me and go, oh, Miss Lee's having a bad day already. Miss Lee is having a bad day, so what can I do to make her day better? How can I be here 100% to make sure that her day gets to green? How can I do what I need to do to support her? I mean, my kids came in for me on these days where I was not green. They'd come in and be like, what can I do? By December, they'd be like, Miss Lee, why are you yellow today? Like, I would hold my calendar up, they'd be like, but why? Like, they got to ask me those questions too. And having those honest conversations with them, sometimes you have to, like, you're yellow and you can't really explain all the reasons why you're yellow, but you have to give them that honesty. I am yellow today, and I'm yellow today because I'm tired, because I'm frustrated, because you yelled at me this morning. I had a kid who would yell at me some mornings, and so some mornings I was yellow because he yelled at me, and he'd be like, and he was in my group, and he'd be like, I'm so sorry I yelled at you this morning and I made you yellow. And so then we would also have that honest conversation about ways that we could go from yellow to green. If one of them would be like, I miss my mom. I'm blue today because I didn't want to come to school because I miss my mommy. Okay, well, what can I do to make your day better? You know that in 5 hours, you get to go home and see mommy again. Mommy's going to pick you up at car rider line. And even just saying those simple words would give the students what they needed to get through the day. But when they come in the morning and they're upset, their teacher doesn't know what to do with them, they have 26 other students, and nobody has asked the simple question, but why are you upset? When we did this, when we started, I would go first. And we would talk about words like frustrated, sad, happy, excited. I had one student who you would think that he was mad all the time because he colored his calendar red almost every single day. But red for him was just a big feeling. Most of the time it was because he was excited to be at school. So we had to talk about those things too. That even though you're red right now, it doesn't mean that you're upset. You can have big feelings and you can tell me your big feelings, but they don't have to be that you're so sad or you're so angry. They can be that you're really, really happy and that's why you're bouncing in your chair today. So preloading and talking about all these feelings and a color you associated with them. And then, so we start with those 4 basic colors, but at some point you're going to end up with students picking purple because that's their favorite and they feel awesome today. And giving them that opportunity to explain themselves was life-changing for me. Like being able to let her color rainbow, that made her so happy in the morning. And then I'm like, okay, pick one color in your rainbow and tell me why you feel that color. It changed her. It changed her in the mornings that she could come and explain herself helped her, and it helped me to support her in the classroom. Because if we have those students that we know they're struggling social emotionally, we know that there's stuff going on at home, that we know that they come in and they had a bad time on the bus or whatever, letting them talk to us about it, oftentimes that's all they need. They need their feelings validated, and they need to know that we're listening. So this calendar, it was life-changing. So I encourage you guys to have a reflective moment with yourself each morning. I mean, literally, like lesson, it would take you like 3 minutes to actually stop. I colored it every single day with them. Color it, tell yourself how you feel, because when you go into work and you're yellow, you're probably not being the best you either, because I know I wasn't. But it can help you. And then when you do it with the students, they'll start supporting each other in those color days too. I had interactions in my classroom and it was later on, like, I mean, we had been doing this for months, where it's like March, and one of my friends looked at another one and said, "I'm really sorry that you're unhappy this morning. Can I give you a hug?" And it made him happy. It fixed that one part of his day so that he could go back to his classroom and actually engage in his work instead of being unhappy at his desk. So the weekly book, social studies video, social story or video clip, typically we would watch the clip or read the book. There are tons and tons of kids shows right now that have great social emotional lessons in them that you can literally watch like a 5-minute clip and then talk about it. So many things. They love the shows already. Most of them are invested in at least one of the shows. And you can find those shows and you can watch just a portion of it and then talk about that show. So a lot of times, because it was so short, the first day we would just watch it or read the book. Because we didn't have enough, once we did calendar, like especially on those days where you had a long calendar, we would just watch it, and I'd be like, okay, we're gonna think about it, we're gonna come back tomorrow. And then on day 2, we would talk about the main message in that clip or book. Now, a lot of times, I would base what I'm pulling here off the behaviors that they had had the previous week, or what I saw as a need the previous week. There are social stories out there for everything. If you don't want to use clips from a cartoon, you can find a social story for anything. So when this was not just some clip that I would pull randomly, this was thought about, this was planned out. You have to think about it because you have to think what's going to best help your students at this time. I would read books with them that always connected back to something that we wanted to work on. So the third day, usually I had a color page with a sentence starter, and that color page usually, I have one. So this had a color page, and it was like one of those graphics that said, "I can be my best," and it had like a bunch of different stuff around it. And this week we were focusing on how can I be my best. And then I gave them this sentence starter, "I can be my best today by." How can you be your best today? What can you do to be your best? And all of them were a little bit different. And this week that we did the I can be my best today, we were focusing on how we could be our best inside the classroom. You can be your best in a lot of different ways. One of them wanted to write, "I can help my mom." I said, well, what about school? How can you be your best at school today? So that's where we come up with the answers like raising your hand in class. And then you can expound on that because that is such a hard skill for some of our kids. And then we would do, day 4, I usually spent direct questions about the clip or the book. Like I would show one of the pictures from the book or the clip, and I'd be like, okay, what feeling is this character feeling right now? How do you know he's feeling that feeling? I think a lot of times our students have trouble with identifying their feelings because they don't know the words. They've never been taught the word frustrated. They've not specifically been taught the word upset. They've not specifically been taught those words and specifically been taught how their body feels in coordination with those words. So a lot of times when we can watch a clip and the guy's face is a certain way, or his hands are clenched, or he's going like this, then that tells them, oh, well, when I do that, maybe that's the thing that I'm feeling. And so a lot of times on day 4, that's what we would talk about. I would pull specific pictures and we would talk about those words and those feelings and how you look when you do them, or how it makes other people feel when you do things like that. Because for especially our little kids, they don't understand how their behaviors affect other people. So a lot of times in the books, or the social stories or the video clips, it's gonna have another character's reaction to the way that they're feeling also. So when I'm pulling stuff for day 4, I'm pulling that stuff. I'm pulling pictures of faces. I'm pulling quotes from the book about what they said that maybe made someone not feel so good. All of those things. And then on day 5, it was literally a what feel right kind of thing. On Fridays, a lot of times we would do free game Friday, where we played board games and we had to wait our turn. That's a hard one too. Where we couldn't talk over each other. And that was another important thing with calendar time. When we shared, if someone started to say something over their friends, it was an immediate redirection. Your friend is talking right now. You can't talk over them. You have to wait your turn. So this calendar time taught so many soft skills also. So my token reward, my kids loved this. It was something I implemented middle of the year because I had some kids who I could not get their behavior under control, and they are extremely extrinsically motivated though. I said, okay, I can do this, but I'm not giving you candy every single day of my life, because you're not gonna go in the classroom and get candy every single day of your life. You're gonna have to be able to do something. So I started these token boards, and they hung on my wall so they could see them every single day. I didn't do stickers because stickers have an extra cost. I literally printed this, hung it on my wall, and at the end of whatever session we were in, and I use this for everything, so I used it for my social emotional, my reading intervention, my math intervention. Anytime that child was in my classroom, at the end of that particular session, they got to go to their token board. And we had asked ourselves 3 questions. It was me asking them, were you responsible today? Were you engaged today? Did you do what I asked you to do? And then there was something like, was I nice? Like, was I nice to my friends? And if they could say yes to all of those, then they got to put a smiley on their board. Let me tell you, we had some strict rules about smileys, because when you got a wall and you got first graders and second graders, they don't pay attention all the time. So they would accidentally write it on someone else's chart, or they would forget to write it on theirs, or they would do some crazy stuff. And at the end of the day, I said, guess you gave your friend a smiley. We had some strict rules we went into it that said that you put your smiley on your chart every day. I'm not doing it for you, that's you. You earned it, you keep it, it's your money, you get to put it on your board. If you don't remember to put it on your board, then you don't have it anymore. If you accidentally put it on my board, then you just gave me a smiley today, thank you. And those were all rules I taught beforehand. That it was so much fun, because you had to have at least 5 smileys to buy something in my classroom, so for some of them, that's an entire week, because some of them I only saw once a day. Some of them, my favorite friends, I saw 4 times a day, so they could buy things more often. But I had drawers in my classroom that acted like my treasure box. They were built into my classroom. I didn't know what I was gonna do with them when I got in there. I was like, oh, those are weird, okay. They ended up being my treasure box system. The first drawer was 5 smileys. You could pull open my drawer, and anything in that drawer was worth 5 smileys. My second drawer was 10 smileys, and my bottom drawer was 15 smileys. So that meant that for some of them, if they wanted something out of that bottom drawer, like for some of my older kids, the Talkies, the Silly Putty, the bigger Poppets, all of those things, some of them had to wait 3 weeks. And so this came into conversations about being responsible with your smileys and saving your smileys and all of those things that also are soft skills our students just don't see a lot of times anymore. I had one student who's like, I really want the Pop-It. And I'm like, okay, but you only have 6 smileys. But I could spend 5 of them. You could spend 5 of them, but the Pop-It's 15. So are you spending your 5 today, or are you saving for those 15? Because you can't get something out of the 5 drawer and save for the Pop-It. You can't do both. So then, as they spent them, it wasn't any extra work on me. I just took any extra work on anybody, except I took my Sharpie over there, and I would mark out their 5 smileys that they spent that day. Typically, I didn't let them shop every day. If somebody got enough smileys and they came up to me at the end of the class after they put their smiley on the chart and they were like, hey, can I buy something? Then I would let them. But it wasn't something that I was like, let's go to the treasure box every day. They would ask, or we would do it on Friday. I'd be like, does anybody have smileys they want to spend today on Friday? But if they asked me and they knew how to use their words and asked in the correct manner, then I would let them go any day, because functional communication is a huge thing. And if you can come up to me at an appropriate time or raise your hand at an appropriate time and ask me a question, then more than likely I'm going to tell you, yes, you can do it if it is appropriate. So this was a game changer for me too, because when the kids didn't get their smileys at first, it was hard. It was hard for them to understand why they didn't get their smileys. But asking those same questions every day, I came up with my 3 questions, and sometimes, so with my first graders, responsible was hard for them to understand. So we talked about what responsible meant, and sometimes when they looked at me weird, I'd be like, did you do what you were supposed to do? That's what responsible means. And when they would say yes, I'd be like, are you sure? And I'd make them think about it. If they weren't getting that smiley, we were talking about why they weren't getting that smiley, so that the next day or the next session that I had them, they could get that smiley. It's a learning tool more than anything. I mean, yes, I had to have stuff in my classroom, but I had one student who didn't earn his smiley 2 times in a row, and then the rest of the week he earned his smileys because he realized that he wasn't going to get to buy what he wanted to buy. And so his behavior in my classroom changed drastically when I implemented this. So many soft skills to be learned through something like a simple token reward that doesn't require anything except literally I printed this off and then taped it to my wall with their name on it. They had to put their smiley on it. It was like there was a cup of markers specifically for them, like we asked a question and they did it all. So it didn't require me buying stickers. It didn't require me to do anything extra except print this off, really. So it was amazing. In our afternoon small groups, we literally started with the question, how was your day? How was your day today? So in the beginning, in August, we heard things like good, bad, and that was a lot of good and bads. As we got further into our semester, if someone said good or bad, I would say, I'm sorry, you can't use that word. I need a different word. What could we use that means good? Was it really good, and could you say awesome or amazing? Was it just okay? Were you upset about something? Is that why it was bad? We had rules as we got further in, and as we learned more vocabulary, you have to put it into place. Because even if you're just telling them upset means this, until they see it in context and until they can put that back onto their lives, they're probably not going to want to use the word or understand the word as fully as they could. So after we talked about it, I had a sheet of paper with the date in the middle, and they would write one word to describe their day. And so at the end of, in April and May, we would get words like fantastic on first try. And those were good days. And to see their growth, it was amazing because we literally started with them knowing those basic good and bad. That was a lot of what my first graders would say. And at the end, we even instituted a rule that if your friend said that word, you could not use the same word as them. So it made them think about their feelings and kind of reflect back on the day. And now a lot of my kids that I saw, I had interactions with outside my classroom in the gen ed setting as well. So if they said they had a fantastic day, sometimes I would look at them and be like, are you sure your day was fantastic? Because they need help recognizing that maybe they did mess up. Maybe they had a setback, but then they overcame it. And they need help recognizing that sometimes we're going to go home and tell mom that you were frustrated today. And that's completely okay because that's a valid feeling to have. So knowing your students, and if you're not in the classroom, just having that conversation with that teacher occasionally, like, so that way your student's not saying like awesome, amazing every day, and you're completely oblivious to the fact that they may not have torn the room up, but they did not have a great day today. And then we would play a board game, a card game, or a social game. This is where that take and turn stuff came in, that you don't always win stuff. The real life skills that our students absolutely don't have anymore. I can't tell you how many times I had to console a crying child because they didn't win the board game. They did not win Ants in My Pants. I'm so sorry, buddy, we don't win all the time. And that's okay. Maybe you can win next time. And we had dice that we would roll that had questions on it. Just that most of them were like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what was one of your feelings today? Things like that. Basic things that make them take turns and make them have those skills. So here's an example of I was literally like I took a computer sheet of paper, I cut it in half, I wrote the date on it. And then, so we had one bad, a lonely, a rough, and a fun. That was a day I wouldn't let them use the same words because we were in December, and I would find that one of my students would copy. He never wanted to say anything original, and so we instituted a rule that you could not use the same word as your friend. So we would sometimes need help with, our friends would sometimes need help with that, and we would go around the circle and be like, okay, well, his day was bad today, but somebody already said bad. What could we say? What's another word we could use for bad? He's having a hard time thinking of another word. Can someone else tell me a word that we could use? So once again, reinforcing all of those different feelings and all of those different ways that a day can make us feel, because sometimes rough is not a word that they would think of, but is a word that I would describe my day with. It was just rough. It was just rough. So why games? So we encourage the turn taking, that losing in a controlled environment. Some days we would do the teamwork aspect of the game. Like I would change up the rules for the basic game and be like, okay, you both have to get all your ants in the pants. You two are on a team and you two are on a team. When both of you have all of your ants in the pants, that's who win, that you win as a team. The critical thinking skills, and then the following rules, because those basic rules, they're hard. The taking turns, the not talking over each other, the not getting upset. But losing in a controlled environment is super important because we send our kids to PE. We send our kids back to that gen ed classroom where occasionally they play games where they compete against each other, and they don't know how to take it when they lose. They just don't. Especially our little ones, they have a hard time with that. And so when it's in a controlled environment and there's only 5 or 6 kids in your small group setting, you can help them through that on a much easier basis and then help them take that back to the classroom. So core support. This is another, and I don't know if it's statewide, but in our county we've gone from saying inclusion to saying that word core support. So it means the same thing as inclusion. Teaching students to use the calm down corner in my school and almost across our district now. We have a calm down corner in our elementary school. We call it like the nest because our mascot is a blue jay. So we have a nest you can sit at that has fidgets and has calm down strips and has all of these things. Teaching our students to use it appropriately is a core aspect of the calm down corner though. So when you're in there and you see a student becoming upset, hey, do you need to use the calm down corner right now? There's some fidgets in the calm down corner. There's one you really like. Why don't we go try that for a few minutes? The prompting them to ask for it and to ask them if they need it is important, because then they realize that they can ask for it. Because a lot of times with some of our friends who get upset, they feel intimidated also. They don't want to raise their hand and ask in front of 25 other students if they can go to the calm down corner. But when you're in there for core support and you can see them getting frustrated and you can bend down and have that one-on-one conversation with them, hey, do you need to go to the nest? Do you need to use your calm down corner right now? They understand that you're understanding and you want them to use it, and they can go, yeah, I need it right now. Even if they didn't realize they needed it, you did, and then later on, they're going to pick it up. They're going to pick up those feelings that when you came over to them that they're having that feelings. And if you keep doing it and you keep prompting them, then later on when they feel those feelings, they're going to go, hey, Miss Lee always takes me to the calm down corner when I feel this way. Maybe I can just ask if I need to go to the calm down, that I can go to the calm down corner. Assisting with occupational therapy devices that might be present. So this one was big for me this year. I have some friends who aren't great at writing, who have some grasps that need help and stuff, and they get so frustrated with writing. And that frustration comes out in ways that we don't need in the classroom. And so I've taken to, when we go to write, hey, do you need help with your pencil grip right now? Do you need me to show you how to use it again? Because those pencil grips sometimes can be confusing, and there's like 16 different kinds, and one might work for one student, and a different one might work for another student. And sometimes they're trying a new one, or it's Monday and they just don't remember. And they need help using that pencil grip so that they can write. And there are some other things like AAC devices that help our students express their needs that they don't necessarily always want to use or have not been taught to use all the time. That is super important. Really assisting with them using those devices that they've been given to support them, because sometimes they get frustrated because they just don't know how to use it. We think as adults we're like, oh, it's easy, they're going to get it, but they just don't know, or they're confused. Going back and making sure that they know how to use those, especially writing. Writing is so hard for some of our friends. And even just getting your hand right and making sure that it's in your pencil grip right, and it'll change for them. It'll change the world for them, some of them. I've seen amazing growth in one of my students because literally a pencil grip, like a pencil grip. Recognizing when students are getting frustrated or angry. This is hard for them to recognize when they're little because they've never been taught that this is how my body looks. I get hot, or my cheeks get red. They're probably getting hot, their cheeks are red. Or I go like this, and that means I'm frustrated. So when we start recognizing it, it's the same as the calm down corner. Buddy, you have your hands in a fist. Are you upset right now? Why are you upset? Can you tell me what it's about? But always telling them, hey, always telling them why you're telling them they're upset. That's what I figured out. Like, he has his hand in a fist. I don't just come over and I'm like, hey, are you upset? I'm like, hey, buddy, I noticed your hand was balled up in a fist. Why? Are you upset? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Like, what are you feeling right now? Why is your hand in a fist? So that way, later on down the road, they can realize that when they're fisting their hand, that might be a sign of them being angry at something or someone. Then assisting with use of calm down techniques at their desks. I have some pictures that can be used at their desk in just a second. And then removing from the students from the classroom as a last resort. We have sometimes that we're just going to have to remove that student to get them to calm down, and sometimes that's best for the student and best for the class. I always used it as an absolute last resort because we want them in there getting that general education core instruction, and we want to make sure that they're getting their needs met. But at some point, sometimes you just got to take them out to calm down. So these are some things that I use at their desk. So you can't see it really well, but over here on The left-hand side of this desk is just one of those comm strips. I have some students who have responded amazing to them. They're stickers. If they peel them off, I bought them in a pack of 50. I mean, you can have a new one. This is a sensory bottle. It's a homemade sensory bottle. A teacher at my school made it about 3 years ago. This is a particular student. He keeps it on his desk, and when he has now noticed that when he starts to get frustrated, if he flips his bottle and watches the glitter fall to the bottom and takes a deep breath, he can then go back to his work and get it done. It took us about 6 months to get to the point where he figured out he could flip it himself and that helped him, but he keeps this on his desk. It is his bottle, and when other people take it, we have to find it because it's actually his. I have a few students who rely on the stretchy bands that go around the front of their desks for their feet wiggles. Some of them, when they get angry, they just need to move. And so we have the stretchy bands that go around the chair, the bottom of the chair, and sometimes that's all they need. So finding these small things, some of our students obviously cannot keep a sensory bottle at their desk. That would not be good for them. It might fly across the classroom. It might be used inappropriately. It may be a super distraction. So some of these things aren't going to work for all of our students, and that's okay because they're individuals. However, we can't say that it won't work for any of them because I lay money on the fact that I did not think that my student would respond to this bottle. I really thought it would become a distraction and that it would end up being played with all day, every day, and it did not. It just didn't. He loves it, he uses it, he still uses it. So just trying things with every student. Even if you think they won't work, these simple things sometimes will. And even if he looks or acts the same as another student and that other student didn't respond to it, doesn't mean he won't respond to it. Middle school is much more brief. I spent longer in middle school, but I found that it's harder to pull them out of class. It's harder. Middle school is harder social-emotionally to teach them those skills. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about doing it at such an early age. K-1-2 is my sweet spot where I just love teaching those social-emotional skills. If we can teach it at K-1-2 and they can have those skills going into middle school, then it's not going to be as big of an issue in middle school. So I did 2 different types of support in middle school. A one-to-one, we did a check-in, check-out system. And then we did some course support. And that course support in middle school is very, very similar to course support in elementary school with a few modifications. So check-in at the beginning of the day during arrival. Most middle schools have a period of time where the doors open and then the bell rings. It's like 15 or 20 minutes, I think, in Montgomery County. Typically, I try to find these students at that time. It literally was like 5 minutes. They got a piece of paper that looked something like this with the date, the student name, how many points we wanted to earn, and then a goal that I set with them. So the date, the student name, and the goal points were something that I filled out. Typically, I did that on my computer, and I would print them so I didn't have to write it every single day of my life. And the mentor, I put my own name down there so that way if they had a problem in class, their teacher knew who to contact about said problem. So this was a really good way to track what they were doing and have them responsible for it. Because I would hand it to my kids and I would say, okay, you're responsible now. We talk about it in the morning. We did write the today I will, their goal. That was something we wrote together. That was the only thing I wrote different every day for them. Some days for them, if they were tired, it was just stay awake in every class. Some days we all have those days, and when you're working with students who have social emotional needs and who have some emotional disabilities or something, some days staying awake is a huge deal for them. So that was an okay goal for me. So the points typically we tried to stay at, most of my friends were at 80%, and so I would just add up how many there were and then did 80%, and that was our goal points for that day. But when we put 80% up there, that was hard for the student to realize what they needed to do. It said percent for a long time. I changed it to points because then they knew they could go down, they could count They could go okay, I got 6 points in first period, I got 5 points in second period. How many more points do I need to get my reward for today? To get my Mustang bucks was what I did in the middle school I was at. There was a store they could go to, and they earned bucks for it. And so most of my kids wanted bucks at the end of the day, and I was cool with that because it meant no money out of my pocket. So with points, they can keep track of it themselves. They know when they got all zeros in first period because they did absolutely nothing, or they were rude to their classmates and rude to their teacher. They knew that they either had to turn their day around or they weren't going to get their reward. They weren't going to get what they wanted from me. Now, and like I said, this mentor teacher is something I added later on because it gave subs a name to connect with if that student needed support. It gave teachers the name because you want to say those teachers know those students, and they do, but when you have 160 students coming in and out of your classroom, it's hard to remember exactly what mentor goes with what student, especially when you have those of us who are keeping up with more than one student. My last year in middle school, I think I ended up having like 10 check-in, check-outs. Like I had 10 different students who would come back to me, and so the teachers had a hard time keeping up with who exactly was coming to me. So when I added this mentor line, it was less calls, hey, is this your student? And more time that they didn't have to spend away from the class trying to locate the mentor of the student that was having an issue. So at the end of the day, we would just review, and again, 5 minutes. Typically, there's that time at the end of sixth period where they're getting ready to go to the buses. I would try to sneak in and see them 5 minutes or less. Like it's just a check-in, especially if they've had a good day. Perfect. We reviewed our goal. Did you stay awake all day today? Oh, it looks like you slept in second and third period. That's okay. You only slept 2 out of the 6 periods today, but we'll be better tomorrow. I always ask, what did you need to do for homework? You got homework tonight? Make sure you do your homework. Did you have a good experience today? Did you have a bad experience today? Giving them those words again, because a lot of these kids still haven't learned those words to express their feelings. They didn't get it in elementary school. They don't get it at home. They still need it. So giving them those words to be like, oh, nope, I struggled today. And then that core support was a lot. It's harder in middle school because this is where our kids feel like when we come up to them that they're getting singled out, that other people are recognizing that we're coming up to them. A lot of whole class prompting is what I did, even in small groups. Hey, if you guys are angry about something, remember you can always come talk to me. Hey, if you're struggling in class, remember we can do this. Some days it got bad and I'd be like, okay, everybody put it down. Everybody take 5 deep breaths. Because in middle school it is so hard, those students don't want to feel singled out. But a lot of it was recognizing when they're getting angry, and a lot of these students who are doing core support are probably also on your check-in, check-out. So at the end of the day, I would go back and be like, hey, in second period today, I noticed that you were clenching your fists and that maybe you were a little bit upset about something. So again, recognizing what they look like when they're frustrated, so that way you can tell them what they look like and they can start recognizing, oh yeah, I'm frustrated. So here are just some useful accommodations that I found useful for our kids who are struggling socially, emotionally, having behavioral outbursts in the classroom. Sensory tools, I've shown some of those that are the most common that I use. Breaks are super important, and then chunking assignments. It's hard to know whether their behaviors have led to the fact that they can't do the assignments, or that they can't do the assignments and that's what's leading to their behaviors. That's a hard thing to pin down. But chunking assignments a lot of times for my kids who were overwhelmed and then would become an issue was a godsend. So our sensory tools, we looked at strips, we looked at bottles. Oh, there's fidget seats. I think I've collected like 5 or 6 of them, and so now I have people come and ask me, hey, you got an extra fidget seat? I'm like, yeah, I got an extra one, and I lend them out. They can really help. I don't know if you've ever tried them, but if you have a student who is really fidgety or who needs to move when they're upset or needs to move when they're happy, the seat will wobble. They're also known as like wobble seats. The bands for the bottom of the desk that we've talked about earlier, and then fidget toys. Fidget toys are hard because there's so many different ones. Some kids respond to some of them. Some kids respond to other ones. Some kids can't use fidget toys at all. I've noticed that like a lot of my kids like the balls with the beads in them, but they break. So this is once again, a student-by-student basis. You're going to have to, just because one sensory toy doesn't work for them does not mean that another sensory toy won't work also. It's not a blanket statement. You have to try everything. It can become daunting, but you can find one that works for them that doesn't become a toy. And really it's the same with all of them, the bottles, the seats, the bands, the fidget toys. You have to teach them it's a tool, not a toy. I learned, one of my first grade teachers taught me that phrase last year, and now I say it all the time when my kids are using things incorrectly. I'm like, that's a tool, not a toy. So you have to teach them that, though, along with all of these things. So you can't just give them a fidget toy and expect them to know that it's a tool and not a toy, because they probably have one at home that they use as a toy, and they use all the time. But you have to teach them that these things aren't something that we can distract our neighbors with, aren't something that we can use all, like when we're supposed to be doing our independent work. You have to set those guidelines with them and those boundaries, and you also have to set those consequences and be firm in your consequences. If you say, if you hit your friend with that, I'm going to take it, if they hit their friend with it, you have to take it, or they don't learn anything. So like I said, hard to find sometimes the one thing that fits them, because it's literally a trial and error situation with every single student. You're not going to find a one-size-fits-all. All of our students are different. All of us are different. Breaks work wonders with some of our students, and again, not with some of our students. Also work differently for elementary and middle school. In middle school, I had a student who had a designated spot for his break. He had a timer in that spot. He went to that spot, he set his timer, and he was responsible enough that when that timer went off, he went back to class. In elementary school, not an option. You have to have it, like, you have to be walked to and from your breaks. But there are several options. You can do it within the classroom. So a lot of us have those calm down corners. A lot of us have partner teachers. My school has a partner teacher set up. Like, it's automatic in the beginning of the year. This is your partner teacher, and when y'all need a break, you can just ask them, hey, can you go to this teacher's classroom? Hey, do you need to go to this teacher's classroom? Some of them just need a simple walk. I have one that when he gets frustrated inside the classroom with something's going on, we walk to the water fountain, he gets a drink of water, we walk back to the classroom, and he's fine. And I have one that did that last year, and at first I had to accompany him to the water fountain, and I had to walk with him, and I had to make sure that he came back to class. But as the months went on, and he knew the expectations, and he knew that there would be consequences if he didn't follow the expectations, he could walk to the water fountain alone and then walk back to the classroom immediately. It started gradually, like I would stand in the classroom door and watch him walk to the water fountain and walk back. And then one day I said, I think you can do it on your own today. Can you walk to the water fountain and walk back? And he was like, yeah, I can do that, Miss Lee. I'm like, okay, I'm trusting you to do it. Don't break my trust, because if you do, then I have to walk with you again. So different for every student, your level of trust in the student, the month that it is, the day that it is, because some days he was so escalated, he needed a walk, but I knew he couldn't walk alone, so I would have to go with him. But some days I knew that I could send him on his own. So the root in some of these, in a lot of these things, is just knowing your students, taking the time to get to know them, and that is one of the huge benefits of that calendar time, of that time where you just get to talk with your students, but also teach them some type of skill. Because if we don't know the student, we don't know what's going to work for them and what's not going to work for them. That's why it's hard when we get new students. That's why it can be so complicated, is that we have no clue, and each student is their own person, and they all respond differently. Chunking assignments, there are different ways to do this. Sometimes some students will just let you fold the assignment. Like there's 3 different sections on the assignment. I fold it so you can only see one of them. You do that one section. I come over, I'm like, oh, you did great. Let's go on to the next section. And then I fold it a different way, and they do the next section. Some students, that was still too much. And they were like, absolutely not. I still have my whole paper. So some students, I would literally have to take my scissors and cut their assignments apart. But if I cut it in groups of like 4 or 5, they could do the whole assignment in the time period. They just got super overwhelmed because it was 20 problems, and they were like, I can't do this. Yes, you can. So sometimes I would have to cut the assignment apart, and some teachers don't like that. But if it helps the student, then you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes we would do odds and evens. This one gets a little trickier because then they're only doing half of the assignment. And for grade, if you're in a grade that grades, or you need to see if they've done mastery of a skill, then we don't want odds or evens because it doesn't give them enough to show us whether or not they mastered that skill. I preferred the folding of the paper. Most of my students got on board with that. If they couldn't do folds, then I did cut the assignment. And I had a few who, if we got to the end of the time period and they weren't done, and it was 1 row of problems, I'd be like, you're fine. It's fine. I'll talk to your teacher. You didn't get 1 row of problems. You did your best. As long as they were doing their best. I tried to stay away from odds and evens. Like I said, that cuts your assignments in half, and then it can get dicey. So, does anybody have any questions or anything for me?
For your calendar, how long did it take you to get them to be able to associate their feelings with the colors and to understand that concept?
Okay, so she asked when I was doing calendar time about how long it took me to get my students to associate the colors with their feelings. And I would say that the basic ones, like the 4 colors, because our school taught that program as a whole for a lot of years, they knew those, so that didn't take me very long. But letting them expand into other colors, it took me like 2 or 3 months for them to strongly associate. And even with those basic colors, I wanted them to tell me why they were happy. Like, okay, you told me you were happy, but can you tell me why you're happy? So we worked on that a lot, and you just have to keep talking. But I would definitely say 2 or 3 months to associate their feeling with the color. At the end at the end, they were like, rainbow. I was like, perfect, pick one. But yeah, it does take a while.
So your school had a school-wide, do you all do PBI? What do you all do for your school-wide?
So we do something, we don't do PBIS. She asked if school-wide, if we did PBIS. So we don't technically do PBIS, but we do like, so there are different programs. Typically, I think it's a guidance counselor thing that has, a lot of them have the 4 colors, the red, the yellow, the green, the blue, and then so your zones of how you feel. I feel like a lot of schools teach that.
And may I add another question from our chat here? Because reminder everyone, we have people viewing online, and so we want to include some questions from chat, and it's related to that question. Do all teachers use these strategies in their respective classes? And does your school use district-wide or school-wide color charts?
Our school had, at one point, a school-wide color chart. Every classroom had it on the wall with the 4 basic colors. It was a program you could buy. I'm not sure that all our classrooms have it this year, but they did last year for sure, I know. I even had it in my badge. It was school, though. That wasn't a county initiative. That was a school-wide initiative. But I do know that a lot of schools buy into that program for their behavioral and needs zones of regulation. So it gives you your 4 basic colors to build off of. Oh, he has a mic. Sorry, he has a mic for you.
Comm strips and sensory strips are new to me. Can you tell me a little bit more about what they are and how students use them during class?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the comm strips, sensory strips, you can literally type that on Amazon, and there's literally going to be like 90 different kinds that come up. So I just have ones that are a rectangle, literally like half the size of this remote, and they're stickers. Most of them are stickers. I stick them to the student's desk, and there are typically different, I think they're almost like grit, like sandpaper, pebbly, that you can rub over and literally like just go like this. Some of them there's figure 8s that'll tell you when to breathe and when to let it out. There's circles, there's so many different types. Especially for my little ones who don't, probably can't read the word breathe, don't need all that. I just got the ones that are literally like this big and put it right on the corner of their desk. And like I said, I think I got them in a box of 50. So if they picked it off one day because they were upset or something, I'd be like, oh, that's okay. I have another one you can have if you want it. Just let me know. If it became an issue, I'd be like, look, if you do it again, you don't get another one. I did have some of those because they would just incessantly peel it off, and I was buying them. But Amazon has a ton of options for those.
I don't like the microphone. We don't have a specific thing for our school, but just in getting to spend some extra money, we found they're called A Little Spot of Emotions books, and they come with the little characters. They're not necessarily the same colors that you use, but they do have it labeled on the back, and there's a lot of things just out there that you can look at. They're just cute little spots with little feet on them.
I tell you, the kids love that one.
And they have individual books for each emotion to go through, and there's a scribble spot when you don't know what your emotion is, and it's all the colors, and that's me a lot of the time. But.
Yes, Little Spot of Emotion does have a set of books that you can buy the plushes for as well. We do have some interventionists that use Little Spot of Emotion, but yeah, those are awesome. I love those too. And the stories are fantastic.
I like to draw, and so I actually drew faces with different emotions on it, and I used different color paper, and then I laminated those. So I have those that I can actually use with my students, and so it helps to associate the color again because they can see a face with it. So.
Yes, sometimes visual supports are super important for our students and getting them to understand. And I would add that I also, when I would try to have, if I had a drawing of one, try to also have a real life picture of it so that the students see an actual person having that emotion on their face as well. Pairing them both together gives the students more than one dynamic to look at and to understand the emotion.
We have another question from here. How can you adapt some of these strategies that you talk about developing vocabulary to express emotions? How do you adapt or adjust some of these strategies to work with nonverbal students?
So she asked about adapting strategies to learn emotions and such to work with nonverbal students. And so I'm in that boat right now. I recently went into a CDC position, and I have students who are nonverbal who need communication skills. And I would urge you, and not all school systems have it, but I would urge you to make sure that if you have an assistive technology department, that if you have a nonverbal student, especially at a young age, to try to get them an AAC device. Because the world changes for them when they have some type of consistent communication. And if they are completely nonverbal at 1st or 2nd grade, then they're probably going to need some type of communication device to be able to communicate in the future. The sooner you do it, the sooner they learn how to use it, and when they get into high school, they can have those skills already built up. What we don't want to do is wait till they're in high school to get them an AAC device, because then we've left years they haven't been able to communicate, and years that they've had to learn the device and be able to. We have some who have AAC devices who can go out in the workforce, but typically they've been using those AAC devices since they were little. Now I will tell you, I have been doing social emotional lessons with my CDC class, and so typically we focus on one emotion a week, and I just pull different YouTube videos and stories and social stories and books about that one specific emotion, and we watch it, and then we talk about it, and I show pictures of I've showed pictures of myself when I'm angry, like what my face looks like when I'm angry, because they know me. And I show pictures of, I have a set of flashcards that has like 6 different pictures of every emotion, of real life pictures. So I show them all of those. I show them animated pictures, all of those things, but it takes significantly longer for them to learn them. And if they're nonverbal, then they're never going to be able to tell you they're frustrated unless they have some form of communication. I mean, as you could even do a simple PEX board. I'm happy. When you talk about happy, pull out your PEX board and show them happy. If you have students who are using AAC devices, or you want to start using PEX systems which is a picture exchange communication system, you need to pull that into your lesson. So when you're teaching happy, you're also pulling up a picture of whatever PEX board or whatever communication system your students are using, showing them where the happy button is, and if it's a real communication device, you're letting the communication device say happy, or you're pointing to it and you're saying happy. Because then they know where to find that at. They know you've read the books, you've shown them the pictures, and they can find it in their communication systems as well.
A follow-up to that question is, for those nonverbal students who have goals of developing language, can that assistive device be a deterrent or be a support?
That's a good question for like speech and language. In my limited dealings with AAC and my dealings with the speech and language, it's not a deterrent. I have met people who feel strongly otherwise, that it will deter kids from getting language, but I have strong feelings that it's not a deterrent. If they use both, then they use both, but they have to have a consistent form of communication. And if they don't have all the words to verbally tell you how they feel, we have to give them something to use. Are there any more questions? All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Courtney. You know, Courtney has just given us a wealth of ideas to take right back to the classroom and use. And that is one of the goals we have in this collaborative, is to give practical suggestions that teachers can use. So I really thank you for that. I can see why you were nominated. And thank you for presenting today, Courtney.